welcome back to chapter 3 of The Body Keeps the Score. This chapter is called Looking into the Brain, the Neuroscience Revolution. We spoke in the last chapter the evolution of essentially how understanding mental health has shifted from the 50s onwards. Now we're in the 90s, and it's sharing how now we had an actual way of processing or seeing the way that the brain would process information. So now we're in these parts of the like scans, which I thought were really interesting because this chapter really made me realize, and I think all of the chapters have so far, so I hope it's been doing that for you as well. It's helping me realize or understand me. And that's what this whole journey has really been for me personally, in learning about trauma, learning about the brain. It's just been, I wanted to change the way that my brain worked. I knew that there was something that wasn't the way I wanted it to be. And I would just express it before as I wanted to be and feel normal. I wanted to have a normal life. What did normal mean to me? To me, it meant having friends, having people in my life that I loved and that I felt loved me, having success of some sort in terms of like a job or career I loved, making it, not struggling and not feeling isolated and alone. And in this chapter, with the scans, the brain scans, this was a thing that came out in the 90s. It was a new brain imaging technique called positron emission tomography, PET, and then later functional magnetic resonance imaging, also known as fMRI. And you can see how different parts of the brain are activated when people are engaged in certain tasks and when they remember events from the past. He goes on to explain in this chapter how they had just done a study in 1994 on what happens in the brain of people who have flashbacks. And of those 12 participants, all 12 had repeatedly told him that it was upsetting to be suddenly hijacked by images, feelings, and sounds from the past. And they wished that they knew what trick their brains were playing on them during flashbacks. And he asked 8 of the 12 if they would be willing to lie in a scanner now that they had this technology so that they could see what was happening while they were having a flashback. And the way that they would create this flashback is by creating a very detailed narrative of their past in a lot of descriptive ways. And then they would also have a narrative of something where they felt really in control, routines in their days, morning, brushing their teeth. There was different examples that they gave, but that would be like their baseline. And essentially, they go on to, in the book, discuss this one woman who came in who was severely traumatized by an accident where she lost her daughter and her baby in her pregnancy. She was pregnant, and there was a lot of self-blame that went on, and she was like a teacher, so she couldn't even teach anymore because just hearing kids laugh. And this happened 13 years later. And so they shared her story of, as they put her in the scanner, just the way that their brain lit up, and the way that the author is talking about this, as he stuck these images on the screen or on his refrigerator for about a week. And he said that he thought that this might be how early astronomers must have felt when they peered through a telescope at a new constellation, because these were images that never were before seen. And there were puzzling things that had come up when they read her this and she was back in her trigger and re-experiencing it essentially. So the amygdala is a part of our brain that warns us of impending danger and to activate the body's stress response. I remember in college, I was very fascinated by the brain because I wanted to learn my brain. And I just took this class because I got to pick, it was really weird actually. I went to San Jose State, and there was a program for bachelors of occupational therapy. And I was so adamant that I was going to go to the master's program. So let's just do it anyway. And that program ended up closing the year of. They no longer were going to offer it after. So I had a choice to make of either changing my degree to something else, but my 4-year degree, or I could still do it. But the curriculum was not there. So I got to basically pick all of my classes, which was really cool because I just explored all kinds of random shit like astronomy and neuroanatomy, and what was another really cool, it was like monkey, apes, and humans class. There was just all kinds of classes that I took, but neuroanatomy was one of them. And it just was really fascinating because I learned a lot about the brain and synapses and the way things work. And what I took away from that was the amygdala was where you have stored memories, and their memories paired with high emotion. So when you can have a memory paired with an emotion, an intense emotion, most likely you will remember it for a long time. And in ways of like changing that, you can also give yourself an intense emotion to have a memory of something new and good. So it was just something that really stood out to me. The amygdala is like it's also like your primal part of your brain, like a snake, right? It's a very reptilian part of your brain that it's an old part of our brain, not like the front logic, rational processing part of the brain. So it warns us of danger. It activates the body's stress response. So it will activate us to run, to flee, to fight, our fight and flight system. So activation of this fear center triggers the cascade of stress hormones and nerve impulses that drive up blood pressure, heart rate, and oxygen intake, preparing the body for fight or flight, which makes sense if there's a reason to fight or flight, right? It's like, get the fuck out of here. There's a snake or a bear or something's gonna happen. You gotta run. This uptake of blood pressure, heart rate, and oxygen gets you ready to do what you gotta do. The monitors attached to, so yeah, this was this lady that it just showed that even after she was taken out of the scanner, that these responses were still going. And so that's like the part about people that are traumatized versus people that are not or have experienced trauma, is that typically there's things that we will make bigger than what they need to be in the moment for what is actually happening, because we're in a trauma response. We're in a response in the body that activates something in us that reminds us of something in the past, right? Flashback, a trigger. I'm not going to get ahead of myself. Let me keep going. So the next part was how these different parts of the brain. So the first one here on the top, it says the right limbic area. So that was one of them that he was surprised was activated. But the other part was the Broca's area on the front left frontal lobe of the cortex. So essentially this actually really blew, this part really gave me a sense of, oh, that's what's happening in my brain. Because there's times where I've gotten triggered there's been so many times I've gotten triggered. I can't count how many times I've been in a trigger. And when I'm in a trigger, it's not like, and I think that this chapter, he said it at the end, where it's like people sometimes don't really understand that they're in a trigger, and they blame it on being cut off, or they blame it on someone being 10 minutes late, or it being something that's happening in the current moment. And sure, it could be, but sometimes when we have reactions or responses that are bigger than what it should be or could be, or that is relevant to that, like if it's just a bit, if it's just this like outburst of emotion that's like, yeah, that's probably, that didn't need that, right? It's most likely something that's happening within us, but we don't really know that that's happening. And oftentimes it's easier to say it's this thing, to blame this thing, than to acknowledge this thing is happening within me. Those are triggers. Those are those moments when we're in a triggered state. And one of the areas of the brain that lit up in this woman when she was being reminded of the past is called the Broca's area. Now, the Broca's area is in the left frontal lobe of the cortex. It was significantly decreased, and it's the speech centers of the brain, which is often affected in stroke patients when the blood supply is cut off. Because the blood supply is being cut off to that part of the brain, because it's going to the other part of the brain and the body and all the fight or flight, the logic part gets shut down. And so when the functioning area, when that part of your brain is shut off, you cannot put your thoughts and feelings into words. And I thought that was really interesting, because there has been so many times where I just don't know how I feel. I just can't explain it. I'm in it, but I can't tell you what is going on within me. I just know that I'm in it. And I get very like, I've gotten paralyzed. I've gotten very extreme. There's been one or the other, right? It's not this like, I'm getting better at being able to say, yeah, my brain is doing this thing, or I'm feeling this right now. But it's still very challenging for me to put these things into words. It's better for me now to kind of be alone than to try in the moment to explain to another person what's happening, because I don't have the words. And it says that victims of assault and accidents sit mute. So he was explaining how this all made sense. And even like Shakespeare in this book called in Macbeth, it said, "O horror, tongue nor heart cannot conceive nor name thee. Confusion now hath made his masterpiece." So being so like in this horror of whatever was happening, it was after the king was murdered. Like I couldn't even express what was happening. Now it's just confusion. Like, and he's talking about how under extreme conditions, people may scream obscenities, call for their mothers, howl in terror, or simply shut down. Victims of assault and accidents sit mute and frozen in emergency rooms. Traumatized children lose their tongues and refuse to speak. Photographs of combat soldiers show hollow-eyed men staring mutely into the void. This doesn't mean that people cannot talk about tragedy that has befallen them. He goes on to say that survivors will eventually have like a cover story, and he says cover story, that offers some explanation, but it rarely captures the inner truth of the experience. I thought that was really interesting, because I think for me, there's fragments and pieces of my childhood that I remember that they were like really highly emotional, or there was something happening that was aggressive or like out there that I remember, but I don't remember everything, and I don't remember a lot, but I remember a lot of the abuse, and there was good parts too that I remember that made me feel emotional, where maybe I felt seen, or I got something, or, you know, it just felt normal, maybe those moments in time. But I would always wonder about that. Like, why can't I remember a lot of my childhood? And I think that it's interesting how the brain and the body, because the brain is connected to the nervous system down our spine, right? To all of our body, how it's made and created to protect us and to help us to survive. And so this is a mechanism of survival. And so we got to learn how to recognize when we're in this survival state, and to realize that we no longer need to be in this survival state unless you're in a actual dangerous situation. That's the most fascinating part about all this, is like realizing that we no longer need to be in the past, and not even if we didn't want to be. It's not about what you don't want. Of course you don't want to be in the past. It's a biological response at times that we are not in control of. So recognizing when we are in those biological responses can help us to become in control of them. It's not an overnight thing. It's a process of essentially it's like if I am being triggered in the moment and my body becomes frozen, or I become just like hyper focused on one thing and one thing only, and I'm so sure of it in my head, my body in that moment has gone and been activated, and I'm using something that is currently happening as a reason to feel this way. Logic, right? The logic, the brain is trying to say it's this, but really it's something from my past. So when we can recognize that this is happening in the moment, that sure, maybe this person said something that triggered me, but it's not really this person that I need to attack. It's this thing that's happening with myself. Not even that I have to attack, just that I have to become aware of. Because if not, we're going to live in a constant battlefield. If not, we're going to constantly excuse ourselves for our lives and blame everything else, instead of taking that accountability of like, hey, this thing is not my fault that I'm experiencing this thing, but when and at what point will I decide to no longer let the past control my current day? Because that shit sucks when it's like an overpowering feeling, which is what a trigger is. It's an overpowering feeling, and you're just like, oh my God, again, like I'm doing this thing again. But the more and more you realize, wow, yeah, like my mind totally went there, and I did make that little thing that could have totally been kind of rolled off my shoulder into something so much bigger than what it needed to be. And I realized how my body shut down, or my brain went 1,000 miles per hour, or I went from 0 to 1,000. Like when you start to see it, then you can start to realize when it's starting to come on. And through the time, the word desensitization wants to come out, but it's like through time you start to, it becomes like a less and less and less thing, and you can catch it a little bit earlier and earlier and earlier. And again, the whole words thing, right? It's like when you're in it, you can't put into words what you're feeling. So it's like even trying to describe it can be a little like, ooh, like, and it depends if I'm in this type of trigger where I just shut down, or if I'm in this type of trigger where I'm like fucking hot and I get like, I'm angry, or I'm like, it's like rage, or I'm just like explosive, right? Like which trigger am I in? Do I just shut down and like be quiet and like do this the whole time, and I'm just like stuck and like in my head and just like, or am I, so this is very interesting. Another part of the brain that lit up in the participants was an area called Brodmann's Area 19. This is the region in the visual cortex that registers images when they first enter the brain. So this was surprising to them, because what happened was they're realizing that people that are even after so long, as soon as they're triggered, this part of the brain activates as if they were witnessing these things happening in real time, as if the trauma was actually occurring. And that's why it feels so real. We're so sure. We're like, no, like, I'm right. And it's like, no, you're in a trigger. And it's so hard. It's so hard to like back off, to go take a break, to go take a space, to go for a walk, to write, to journal, to talk, to like breathe, to take a step back, to sleep on it, to let it go for today, for right now. Because you're just so adamant of your truth, because it feels so real. This part was also really interesting, is that, and I just need to read this part because it was just so much. I feel like it would do you value to understand. Shifting to one side of the brain, this scan also revealed that during flashbacks, our subjects' brains lit up only on the right side. Today, there's a huge body of scientific and popular literature about the difference between the right and left side. You've heard that right people are creative and left people are more logical, right? But he said he never really paid attention to that whole like right side intuitive, left side logic. But essentially, that we know that the two halves of the brain do speak different languages. The right is intuitive, emotional, visual, spatial, and tactual. And the left is linguistic, sequential, and analytical. While the left half of the brain does all the talking and the right half of the brain carries the music of experience, it communicates through facial expressions and body language, and by making the sounds of love and sorrow, by singing, swearing, crying, dancing, or mimicking. The right brain is the first to develop in the womb, and it carries the nonverbal communication between mothers and infants. We now know the left hemisphere has come online when children start to understand language and learn how to speak. This enables them to name things, compare them, understand the interrelations, and beginning to communicate their own unique subjective experiences to others. The left and right side of the brain also process the imprints of the past in dramatically different ways. The left brain remembers facts, statistics, and the vocabulary of events. We call on it to explain our experiences and put them in order. The right brain stores memories of sound, touch, smell, and the emotions they evoke. It reacts automatically to voices, facial features, and gestures, and places experienced in the past. What it recalls feels like intuitive truth, the way things are. So because there's deactivation in the left hemisphere, it has a direct impact on the capacity to organize experience into logical sequences and to translate our shifting feelings and perceptions into words. So the Broca's area, which blacks out during flashbacks, is on the left side. Without sequencing, we can't identify cause and effects, grasp the long-term effects of our actions. So we can't think about, if I act in this way, which my trauma brain, my trigger brain is making me want to do this thing right now. It's not thinking about the long-term effects of our actions, right? This is why we can do something and then have later regrets of like, oh, like, why did I act that way? Why did I say that thing? Why did I do that thing? Why did I end this thing? Why did I break this thing? Why did I emotionally abuse or verbally fucking vomit? Because we're not able to think rationally. That's bottom line. Both parts of our brain are not on. And he goes on to say that people can feel like they're losing their minds, and that's why. So how do we learn to be here and not there, to fully be alive and in the present? And this is essentially what we're going into more and more. And this is what I've been trying to do for quite some time now, it's been quite the journey, to say the least. Would I have it any other way? Sure. But like, it's my life, so this is just what it is. And I'm very proud of how far I've come, and I feel very eager to continue to see where my life goes. Has it felt like easy? Hell no. It's been super hard, and at times I'm just like, oh my God, come on, brain. And that's been the other part of like being so hard on myself. So this helps me to have more compassion with myself and more understanding of myself, and that also helps me to have more compassion and understanding for others. I think that that's been the biggest thing about this whole journey of going on this journey of wanting to end cycles and be the change, is that it's also helped me just to have immense love for humans, because I know I just know how much people can go through, and it's hard, you know. It's really hard to get back up and keep going. And if we just all had a better understanding of trauma and the brain and the body, and how it's not really our fault, right? These things are passed down, and even our parents, they do the best they can. I mean, just this book too, like how much has been learned about the brain since the 50s to the 90s, and even from the 90s now. Like, our parents and grandparents did not have this education. They did not know this. They knew what they knew, and that was it. And I think that that's also a really important thing. Yeah, there's a part of me that has wanted to blame my parents, and I have, absolutely. I've been like, you fucking assholes. And like, I can go tell other people about my story, and they're like, why would you want to talk to her? Like, fuck her, you know, my mom. And it's like, at the same time, it's also like, it's complex. It's so complex. And so I think for me, it's more of like, I'm sharing my story because I want other people to know that, or at least not feel alone. You know, it's like, if you have another person that has experienced these things, and they're also like a good human, and like trying things that you want to try, or doing things that you want to do, or living life in a way that you adore or you like admire, then it's like, it gives you hope. And I think for me, I've had mentors and teachers that have inspired me for sure. I haven't really met a lot of people though that have been super vocal or vulnerable about their stories in person. I have online, and those people have really helped me to see like, whoa, if she could do it, like I could do it. More like females, right, that have experienced sexual trauma. Because it's like, when you have someone that's experienced things that you have experienced, you're like, or like something similar, right? Maybe not the exact same thing, but it's like, oh, well, if they could do it, I could do it. And that's really like what I want this whole journey to be. And this book is a manual, I think. We'll see. We're on chapter 3. We'll keep going. But it's all of the therapy that I've done, all of the work that I've done, it hasn't been for nothing. And so wherever you are on your journey, know that it's literally, you're building a new world. You're building a new world, and it has different dimensions and colors, and it's like putting together a puzzle, but not just like a flat puzzle. It's like this whole world of a puzzle. And so all the things that you've learned, even though maybe you've done therapy and you're like, this should have worked, that's not enough, right? It's also experience. It's also community and having friendships and love. It's also maybe medications, maybe not, maybe other modalities of things, right? But all of it helps you eventually. It all starts to connect and click, if that makes sense. So keep going on your journey. I hope that this video has inspired you in some way. If it has, subscribe to my channel so you'll be notified for the next chapter to drop next week. And please let me know below in the comments if there's anything, questions that you may have of experiences that I can share with you, or questions that you may have that might have come up. I would love to share more with you that you're interested in, and see you on the next one. Thanks for being here.